Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to create an assessment in Global PD. So the first thing we need to do to actually create an assessment in Global PD is to click on Manage Standards and Learning Targets. The reason that's the case is in order for an assessment to be created, there has to be a standard to which the assessment is tied. When the standards load, you'll be able to see any standards and learning targets that are attached to the team that you are viewing. Now, right here is where you can see which team you are viewing. And in this case, I have selected to be looking at the team called Second Grade Reading within Kiscaria South Primary. Okay, and so that's what I see here on my screen. And I can click drop down to see all the different standards and learning targets that have already been created. Now, for the purposes of this video, I already created a learning target, which is under ESCC 112E, Read On Level Text with Purpose and Understanding. Okay, now, in order to create an assessment, the first thing you have to do is create a learning target. And you can see the one I created here, LT, students will read on level for comprehension in regards to poems. Okay, but how did I make that? Is I chose this standard and I came up here and clicked Add. And when you click Add, you get to fill in the information in the learning target. What do you want it to say? And you can see the information that I already entered. The learning target itself, student-friendly version, and then down here, what type of learning target is it? And I marked likely to cause difficulty, mostly because I don't even know if what I'm typing in and if it matches the correct grade level or anything of that nature. So you have three choices of prerequisite, absolutely necessary, or likely to cause difficulty. And then you click Save. When you click Save, it brings you back to your essential standards and learning targets. So now you're actually ready to create the assessment. So you get to Manage Common Assessment. And you click it and wait for the common assessments to load. After having clicked on Manage Common Assessments, you can see here the common assessments that come up under the team, once again, under the filter that I have applied, which is to reading. Now I can go in here and change which filter I'm looking at or which group I'm looking at, but then I would be looking at the common assessments for whichever group I select. You'll also notice on this screen that you get to see a date range, that only visible are the common assessments that are scheduled to be given during this date range. So a lot of times when you create a common assessment, if you schedule it for a week or two in the future, it may not appear on this list unless you alter this calendar. And every time you come back to this screen, this calendar defaults to the current day, which is December 19th in my case, and showing about 3 or 4 days into the future. So just something to keep in mind that if you to the point where you're scheduling an assignment or scheduling an assessment and you put it for a week or so in the future, it may not show on this list. So anyhow, here's the assessment that I started to create, but I'm going to show you how you go about actually doing it. So I click on students will read on level, telling me this is my assignment again. I called Casey at the bat because that's what I called it. And as it's loading here, we're going to get into the details of how you actually create a common assessment in the program. So first thing it's going to do is ask you what you want to call your assessment. The next box is asking which standard is this assessment tied to. And you can see that I had to go through all the different standards and learning targets that have been created and find the one, and these go throughout the entire district, so yours won't have as many choices. And I had to find the standard and then learning target this assessment actually goes with, box by it. Come down here and I have my choices of summative or formative assessment. This is asking me if I want to have an assessment that I might want to upload because I already have the questions where I have the reading assignment or I have something that I just want kids to be able to see on screen, and all they're going to do on here is answer their or type in their possible answers. Or if I need to create the entire assessment online, and I'm going to mark that one for our purposes. Generally, a good rule of thumb is to try to use 3 questions per learning target, so that if there's a problem with one of the questions, it doesn't skew your data so badly that it makes it look different than it was intended. When it comes to questions, you get to choose: do you want multiple choice or rubric based? For our purposes in this exercise, I'm putting multiple choice, and then I'm going to come down here and it asks for the question text, and I'm going to say, what does the word preceded mean in the poem? And I'm going to come down here and say that option A is correct, and that option A is happened prior. Option B is not correct, and option B says happened after. And option C is also not correct, and it says happened at the same time. And I don't even want an option D, so I'm going to come down here and remove it. This asks me which learning target does this go with. I mark it in the box up above. So here's my learning target. This is asking me on web depth of knowledge, what level is this term or this question, and how many points do I want it to be worth. So I'm going to click 1 and click Save Question. Now I'm going to come down to question number 2 and do the same thing, that I want it to be a multiple choice. And I'm going to say what ends up happening at the end of Casey's act. And I'm going to mark option A, he hits a home run, but that's not the right answer. And choice B, he strikes out. And that is the correct answer. And I'm going to come over here to option C and say he hits a single, which is also not the correct answer, so I don't mark it correct. And once again, I don't want a letter D, so I remove it. At the learning target, what level of depth of knowledge is it, and how many points do I want the question to be worth, and I click Save Question. Now, I had said there were 3 questions, so I'm going to add a third question, multiple choice. And for this one, I'm going to type in, who wrote the poem? And I'm going to come underneath, and I'm going to say, choice A, Ernest Hemingway, which is not the right answer. And I'm going to go to letter B, and I'm going to say Dan Smith, which is also not correct. And then for choice C, I'm going to say Ernest Thayer, which is the correct answer. So I'll come out here and mark that as correct. And I don't want a letter D again, so I'm going to remove it, choose my learning target, web depth of knowledge level, and how many points I want it to be worth. And I'm going to click Save Question. Now, I had said that I wanted 3 questions on my assessment, so I'm going to come down here for question 4 and remove it, and then remove what would have been question 5 as well. That leaves me with my 3 questions, which you can see here, 3 questions, each one worth 1 point for 3 points. And it's asking me for a proficiency range. In Global PD, every assessment has to end up having 3 levels that a student can fit into: above proficiency, proficient, or below proficiency. So in our case, I'm going to say that if a student 2 of the 3 questions correct, then they're proficient. So for a student to end up being proficient, they need to end up with getting the score of 2.0, because they can only get a 0, a 1, 2, or a 3. So for proficiency, I need 1.99 and the other side of it to be 2.01. So that if a kid gets a score of 2, they are considered proficient, because they're between 1.99 and 2.01. If they get all 3 questions correct, they would end up in the above proficient category. And if they miss 2 questions or 3 questions, they would fall in the category of below proficiency. And once I have done all those things, I click Save. When I click Save, it brings me back to the list of common assessments, and I reset my team for the 2 reading it south so I can make sure I'm seeing the right assessments. Okay, so here's the assessment I was working on, so I'm going to click on it, and it'll come back up. And now I have everything all ready for the assessment, so I can come up here and I can double check to make sure I'm happy with all the questions and how everything's worded, and then I can click Publish. And when I click Publish, the assessment will no longer be editable, and that's what this box is telling me. And I click Yes. The next step then is to go back into your assessment one more time after you have published it, because the next piece is going to be to schedule it. When I get into my assessment one more time, it's going to now have the schedule button as a choice, and it's also going to tell me that I can no longer edit it because it is published. So I'm going to click Schedule. And when I click Schedule, we'll be able to add it to a calendar to select when we actually want to give the assessment. And so with my calendar loaded, you can see the assessment that we've been working with, Casey at the bat, and to the left the calendar, and I can just drag this assessment to whatever date that I want the assessment available for or that I plan on giving it. So I placed it on to December 20th, and you can see that it pops up there. So that's how you go about publishing and scheduling an assessment. The last piece would be to actually print the assessment for students to use. We're going to go back to the assessment one last time by clicking Manage Common Assessments. And on this Common Assessment page, I'm going to click on the assessment that I would like to see and do the printing options on. And it brings up this information telling me nobody has taken it yet. So 58 students, because that's how many kids are in the team that I selected, have not taken it yet. And up here are my print options. And in the print options, I can print several different ways. This could be bubble sheets if I'm going to have the kids just fill in bubble sheets that I will then either take pictures of or send through a Xerox machine once that feature is available. This is where I would print the entire assessment for the kids if I wanted them to be able to see the questions, answers, like everything all from a printout. And then the bottom one is the instructions for browser capture, which is the most popular way, which is having kids go to the website and take the assessment there. So I'm going to click on instructions for browser capture, and a new screen pops up giving me the student's name. They go to this website, which never changes in Global PD. It's always the same website. The student name ID number will never change. It'll always stay the same for the student. The only thing that actually changes between assessments is this assessment ID number. And I can print that out and give it to the kids, or I can call each kid up and show them this, or there's a lot of different ways you could handle this particular piece. And then the student would go to that website, enter that code, and take the assessment that I created for them. So that's the overview of how you create an assessment from beginning to end in Global PD. And then after you give the assessment, you would start having information and data that you would be able to analyze found in this pie chart and then in these class by class breakdowns on this side. Thanks for watching and good luck.